Hi, I'm Mary Wing Soares, and this is Transparency in Government. And with me today is Kevin Smith from our town.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mary.
very much.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we took the summer off, Kevin. We're back in
We
town.
did.
Yeah,
We're getting back into the swing of things.
we are.
Old home day week as we record this.
That's right. And it looks like we both have good tans, so
I know, right?
we must have had an enjoyable summer, right?
It's a good thing.
Well, let's get down to business, though.
Okay.
We've got an awful lot of construction going on 93, and in 102 opened up one side, and now they're working on the other side. What's our timeline? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it's about 2019, although the Ash Street Bridge hopefully should be completed this fall. But the whole widening project should be completed in the fall of 2019. So that includes 93 being widened completely, all the bridges being done, all of the old bridges being torn down, and all of that is slated to be done by the end of 2019. And then hopefully right on the heels of that, the fourth lane of 93 will also be constructed. Well, it's constructed now. They have to add a little bit more pavement, but hopefully they'll have the green light. And what they're waiting on is, and I talked a little bit about this at the last town council meeting, the environmental regulations today between Department of Environmental Services, the EPA, it holds up and delays these projects unbelievably for years. And that's what's holding up really this fourth lane right now, is because what the environmental agencies have said is you have to show how you're going to reduce your chloride, your salt that you put down on the roadways before we'll allow you to put a fourth lane in. And if you can't show how you're going to reduce your salt usage, we're not going to allow you to put the fourth lane in.
Hasn't that already been planned, before they even thought about putting the fourth lane in?
It was planned by DOT, but it's not as simple as, well, here's our plan on paper, now we're good to go. It's the Army Corps of Engineers has to look at it, the EPA has to approve it, DES has to approve it. And it drives me nutty, Mary, because it's like, we live in the Northeast. It snows a lot. We don't, down south, they don't have this problem.
Right.
But we're going to have to put salt down on our roads. And, one of the things that I talked about often back when I was running for governor many, many, many years ago, was this idea of taking a balanced approach to government. You always got to have balance. And I feel like it's just not balanced right now. Like, you need to put down salt for public safety reasons. And we just spent millions and millions of dollars on this highway improvement of widening it. And so what, we're going to go from 2 to 3 lanes?
No,
that makes no sense. No, you want to go to 4 lanes, and it needs 4 lanes. So yeah, you're going to have to put down extra salt in those areas when you're salting the roads during the wintertime. And again, that's kind of common sense. It snows, and you don't want people to go off the road. I keep saying, they're coming up with all these plans on salt reduction and how they're going to put less salt down and maybe use other materials. Well, who's going to be the first person to sue the state when they go off the road because they weren't properly treated? And the reason they weren't properly treated is because the environmental agency said, no, you can't put this stuff down on the roads. I mean, it drives me up a wall.
Right.
Sorry,
well,
I went off on a tangent.
No, but I'm sure it will be litigated, because we know we live in a litigious society.
We do.
So,
well, in fact, that's how this all started, was with a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Is you had the Conservation Law Foundation, which sued the state over this issue and said, you're expanding the highway, the interstate, from the Massachusetts border up to Manchester, and you're ruining the environment with all the extra pavement and salt that you're going to have to put down the pavement. So it started with a lawsuit, this whole thing. And I suspect it won't be the last one either.
But we are looking at, now you said the Ash Street Bridge should be open for 2 lanes by this fall.
Yep. By 2018.
And that's just, what they've done is put up a new bridge, and they're going to take down the old bridge.
Yes,
and
except
always be 2 lanes, or will it?
It will be 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Still, the interesting thing here about the Ash Street Bridge is the current one, or the old one, is a historic bridge. The way it was built, the design of it, it's got a historic designation on it. So it actually can't be destroyed.
So what are we doing?
You want a bridge?
I know, really. I got a
No,
bridge.
I mean they've put out a whatever to ask if anybody wants the bridge, but they're going to have to store the bridge somewhere because
we
they
put a
can't.
little decorative bridge in the middle of Woodmont,
Maybe.
you know?
Yeah, right. I'm sure we can find a spot for it.
Maybe build like canals and have that bridge be the,
Why not?
a little Venice action.
Literally a bridge to nowhere.
Right.
But it's a historically designated bridge, so they have to preserve it when they take it. Unlike the 102 bridge, which they can just take down and destroy it.
And they will be doing that as well.
I believe they've already started deconstructing it because the new one's been opened.
And people should not worry when they're deconstructing, right? Nothing's
No.
going to fall on them as they're driving underneath it.
It shouldn't. I mean, there's no guarantees, but look, these guys are professionals. Engineers look at these things and they do it. This isn't their first rodeo. They've taken down a lot of bridges, and so people actually should feel better now that a new bridge is up there, because
Right.
that was an older bridge, that one over 102, and the new one they've built is beautiful.
It is nice. I've been over it a
Yeah.
couple times, so it is nice.
Yeah.
But they're not done with striping. They're not done with
No.
paving. They're not done with any
Nope.
of that stuff.
That should again, a lot of that should be done in the fall of this year, but all completion will be done in the fall of 2019, and then right on the heels of that in 2020 will be the start of Exit 4A.
Not until 2020? I thought it was
Right.
going to be done by 19.
Well, no, it was always originally slated to start construction in 2019. Just as they were finishing I-93, they were going to start the construction of 4A. That was always an aggressive schedule, and we knew that going into it. But nonetheless, we wanted to push them to get this started early. The latest schedule has it starting in more like first quarter 2020. So it's not that far off of schedule. But once again, okay, what's taking so long? What are the delays? What you have to go through a period of what's called the environmental impact study.
Sure.
And it's to study what are all the environmental impacts of building a new exit ramp off the interstate. And so once again, you're getting EPA input, Army Corps of Engineer, DES, Fish and Game, Wildlife and Fishing Game, and all these things have to be studied. And that's largely what has been holding up this project and delaying it.
Well, obviously, 102 from Mammoth Road out was redone again
Yes,
this year.
right.
But may even have
Parts
been
of it
above.
were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
up to almost to Shaw's actually.
Right.
And that was because it wasn't done really well last year and they
Yeah,
redid
I
it,
mean,
or
they did it late in the season last year. And if you talk to the contractors who were doing it, they'll point fingers at DOT. And if you talk to DOT, they'll point fingers at the contractor. And I met with them late fall last year on 102 and just said, somebody needs to fix this,
Right.
because it was horribly done. The
Right.
seams weren't lined up. The lines were curvy and all over the place. And DOT completely agreed. They said this was shoddy work and it's going to have to be redone.
so does DOT pay for it though?
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're not, the town doesn't pay a dime.
No,
for
I
that.
know the town doesn't pay a dime up front,
Yep.
but will we pay a dime behind because the state will come back to us in some way or another?
because they were under contract to do it, and to my knowledge anyway, the contractor agreed it had to be redone.
Okay.
So there weren't any additional monies expended on it. It was the time and labor that it took to redo the areas that they had to redo.
And materials.
In materials. I mean, again, they knew they started late in the season. They were blaming DOT on that. DOT isn't taking responsibility on it. I didn't care as long as it just got fixed, because it looked really
Right.
bad.
Right.
And you hear people complain about it, and they talk to you. Some people don't know it's a state road, and so they assume, did the town do this work? No, it wasn't the town.
No.
So
Yeah. So we have a couple of things coming up in September. We have the primary, and then
Yep.
we have elections in November.
yeah,
People can go to register to vote all the way up to September 6th, I think, at
at town hall.
At Town
Yep.
Hall. But there's going to be a special one, it's December 5th from 6 to 7
Okay.
in the town clerk's office or the checklist, the supervisor of the checklist will be there to sign people up.
Yep.
In this state, though, you can walk in and register the day of the
That's
vote.
right. Yep.
So,
Same day registration.
right.
So as long as you have the proper, if you're not sure what the proper identification is that you need to have, check with the town clerk's office before you go and find out what that is.
Right.
We even have a provision in state law where if you don't have any identification on you, you can still fill out an affidavit swearing you are who you say you are and that you're living in the state.
You gotta love New Hampshire.
You do. There really is no reason not to vote.
Really, no.
Because you've got plenty of opportunities to register to vote, including same day. And I know our supervisors of the checklist and town clerk's office are more than happy to help people out in that endeavor.
And I saw that Leadership Londonderry is getting restarted again.
It is. A lot of interest in it. We couldn't take everybody in the class because it was getting too large. I think the initial class is somewhere around 23 people. But the folks whom we turned away, so to speak, we've kept them on file and told them they'll be top priority in the next class because we plan on doing this again next year. But the town council was a top priority of theirs to resurrect the Leadership Londonderry class. Of course, it was initially started by Pollyann Winslow and Mark Oswald. It waned off around 2011 timeframe when the class sizes started to drop off.
Right.
So it's taken a hiatus for a little bit, but it's back now. We're very excited about it. I think it's great. The more people can do to educate themselves about how town and school government works,
Absolutely.
the better.
So there's a current class right now that's
It
happening?
hasn't started yet.
No?
It starts in September, but
Okay.
we already took applicants. They've been chosen, they've been informed, and so it'll start up in September.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's
And
great.
it's 9 months. It's like the school year.
It
It's
is.
like going to school.
Yep.
And it's once a month.
Once a month. I think it's like 4:30 to 8. And you'll hear from every department in the town. You'll hear from the school department, different boards and committees in town. And it's really just to give people an idea of how their town government works.
Right.
Things like, how do you set the tax rate?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, what percentage of the population in town do you think knows how the tax rate is set? Probably not much. And that's, I don't fault anybody for that. Frankly, before I got involved in municipal government, I wasn't entirely sure how the tax rate is set, but it's an interesting process. And so it's stuff like that we're educating
Right.
people on.
And how your house is assessed and
Right.
how the schools are managed and everything else.
Yep.
I was part of the initial class and obviously have become very involved with the town.
Right.
So we know that it has a good return
Yep.
on people. If you ask a lot of the people who are on the boards right now whether or not they went through Leadership Londonderry, I think you'd find a lot of
Quite a
them
few did, yeah. No, and that's the other part of it too is, we're hoping the folks who go through this will want to stay involved and will want to get on boards and committees. Maybe they want to run for an office in the town.
Yeah. So something that raised a flag for me the other night when I was listening to the town council meeting was the fact that the cable studio collects, or the town collects the cable access fees and pays out
Yep.
for the cable studio and also to the school. And there was a conversation about that part of the money being charged to the school as opposed to being taken from the cable access fees. What's your thought on that?
Well, my understanding is that this has been kind of a long-standing agreement between the town and the schools. It's been going on for many years where we collect a franchise fee from Comcast, and then a portion of that franchise fee is allocated to the school district for cable-related purposes. A couple of years ago, we formalized that agreement in writing because there really wasn't anything in writing in the years prior, even though it had been going on for quite some time. So we formalized it in writing. Look, I think it's a benefit to the town and the school, and it goes for cable purposes, whether it's Leo over at the high school, the cable studio here.
So the classes that are taught here too from the high school.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a good partnership. It works. There was some concern at a previous town council meeting about they just wanted to know before the town released the funds what the money was going toward, to make sure that it was being used toward cable purposes. The business administrator from the school district gave the town a 3-year budget for how that money is being used, and it is obviously for cable purposes for the school district. So I think it's been a good partnership, Mary. I think it works, and I think we'll probably continue to do it in the future unless the council decides otherwise.
Well, I hope people pay attention, though, because it's really been, first of all, it is one set of pants. It's two pockets,
Yeah.
but one set of pants. So it's ridiculous that we talk about the problems that we have between the school and the town. I appreciate there were two different government entities,
Yep.
but it's all the same tax money.
It is all the same tax money.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to go back to the roads a little bit because I
Sure.
heard that you spoke about a way to move the roads up in the 10-year plan would be to give some of the money, offer to pay for some of the
Right.
road improvements. And that only helps the town in the long run.
It does. And it was kind of an idea that was born last year when we received an unexpected amount of money from the state to use. They gave us additional highway fund. Every community got additional highway grant funds. Ours was a little over $500,000. And so it was unanticipated. And right around that time, we were getting solicited about the 10-year highway plan that the state puts together and what intersections we wanted to put in there as a top priority. And one of the ones that was a very high priority for us, but wasn't for the state at the time, was the intersection of Stonehenge Road and 28. Wasn't even on their 10-year highway plan. So we approached Councilor Pappas and said, look, we're willing to take our $500,000 allocation that we got from the state unexpectedly and put it towards this intersection if the state will agree to move it up higher on their 10-year highway plan. So a partnership between the state and the town. We're going to pay for a portion, you pay for a portion. And it worked out to roughly 50% because I believe it was like a $1.1 million project. The state thought it was a great idea. Councilor Pappas thought it was a great idea. And so that intersection improvement went from not even being on the state's 10-year highway plan to being a priority number 1. So the design of it in engineering will occur this year, fiscal year, so July to June. And then the construction will start next July of 2020
Okay.
on that intersection. But I think it's a great way of getting things moved higher up on the 10-year highway plan when it involves state roads.
Sure.
Because what it's saying is the town's willing to have skin in the game.
Sure.
We're not expecting you, the state, to do the entire thing. We're willing to throw some money at this, but in return, we want it to be a higher priority.
So what is going to happen at that intersection? Are they going to put a light? Are they going to put a turning lane? What are they going to
I don't know yet because it hasn't been engineered.
Okay.
Most likely, I think you'll probably see a light end up at that intersection, but until it's engineered fully, I don't know if there'll be additional turning lanes, if there'll be a light there, what's going to happen there.
Well, when the project on Stonehenge came through,
Yep.
they talked about being willing to throw some money on
Yep.
that intersection. Is
Right.
that part of can you add that money to it or?
Well, they did offer to do that because right now they're obligated to do off-site improvements and put in a turning lane. And what they did is they came to me and said, Kevin, rather than spending the money to put in a turning lane, which is probably only going to be ripped up in a year anyway, how about we take whatever money we were going to spend on that and give it to you guys to put towards this upgrade of the intersection, which I thought was a nice gesture
Sure.
and a good idea.
Yeah.
But like anything in government, logic doesn't always apply here. And the concerns were twofold. One was if there was a delay for whatever reason in the improvement of that intersection on the state's part, now it wouldn't be improved by the Stonehenge folks.
So they're going to have to do it regardless.
They're going to have to do it regardless, yeah. And the other thing it was going to require was an amendment to their site plan, which would have meant they'd have to come back before the planning board.
Yeah, and that's the last place they want to be.
Yep.
Okay.
Even though, I know you sit on the planning board, so, you know, you guys don't, you know, you're not too scary, but it's the last place any developer and applicant wants to go.
No,
once they get that approval,
Right.
they don't want to see the planning board
Right.
again.
Okay.
So it is what it is. So
It
they'll put in a turning lane for now, and then
That's very
it'll
frustrating,
probably
though.
be short-lived.
So one of the other things that came up was the fact that we're having to put money into the fire stations again and again and again, more than 10% of the cost of the
Right.
fire station
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were very fortunate, I think, when we built the North Fire Station, because we already had all of the architectural design from the South Fire Station, so we saved a lot of money in that regard. But is it costing us money in the long run because of that?
Well, from what I understand, I mean, I wasn't town manager when the fire stations both of them were constructed. From what I understand, though, there was a lot of value engineering that was done on both of them. And value engineering is great in the short term because the money's cheaper. But
But
in
you
the
end up
long
doing
term,
less.
you end up with what we're doing now, which is just long-term maintenance on both of these buildings. So, you know, it's been an ongoing thing with both of these fire stations. And as we go back to fix these things, we're fixing it so that it won't have to be repaired again for a long time down the road. But that was one of the concerns that council had when talking about the upgrades to the central fire station, is that we don't cut corners.
Right, there's no value engineering
There's no
here.
value engineering. It's got to be done right the first time,
Right.
so that we're not spending 10% of the original cost to fix these problems down the
And
road.
when do we expect the fire station to be done? Central Fire.
Wow, Mary, another great question that involves environmental issues. We were hoping to have shovels in the ground already.
I thought so.
And a couple of things. So one is we can't clear any trees until the Army Corps of Engineer fully determines that the long-eared bats, which are endangered species, are not making their home in this area. They don't expect to find that, but you never know. So we got to preserve all the trees in the meantime until they are conclusive about that. The other issue is there's a man-made fire pond that is currently on the current site of the fire department. When the fire department was built in 1978, they built the pond as their fire pond to use for water. Years later, municipal water was brought to the station. They no longer needed the fire pond. So as part of the renovations, they have to fill in most of this pond. Now, the pond is a little over 10,000 square feet. It's like 10,400 square feet. The DES rules say if you are filling any more than 10,000 square feet, you have to have this whole wetlands mitigation package, which either means A, paying a lot of money into this fund that goes towards wetlands mitigation, or B, you have to like basically offer land that is a lot more larger in size
Does
than
the
the
town
wetlands
own
area.
any land?
Well, we do, and we actually offered them land, but they determined that the land wasn't as valuable as, so now, here's another thing. It's on the books, state law, that man-made fire ponds are exempt from the wetlands mitigation. Okay?
So,
But because the fire department was built largely with volunteers in 1978, we don't have any of the original engineering plans. But we do know it was a man-made fire pond that was built. And you would have chief after former chief attest to this, who were there at the building of it. So we said, this is clearly a fire pond. It's right next to the fire station. Well, if you don't have the plans, we can't verify it. So we got to treat it as a regular wetland. And I'll be honest, Mary, that's when I got on the phone to the governor.
Right.
And I said to the governor, you got to help us out here because this project's going to be delayed until next year
Right.
at this rate because they're making us jump through all these hoops. I explained the whole thing to him. He said, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I'm going to call the commissioner and we'll get this solved. And he did. He made one phone call, and within a week, we had this whole thing resolved. And they are treating it as a man-made fire pond. It shouldn't take, though, for me to have to call the governor
Sure.
to get this problem. This is what going back to this whole environmental thing.
Right.
Just be reasonable about it. And we didn't feel like they were being reasonable about it. So long story short, we should be able to get shovels in the ground by the beginning of September.
Okay, and you have a very short window, though, to be working.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully foundations will get poured before the ground freezes. That's the hope right now.
That's the goal.
And, you know, if everything goes to plan, it should be completed by next summer. So,
All right.
yeah.
Boy, Kevin, that's an awful lot of stuff.
Never a dull moment,
No,
Mary.
no.
You know, it's what
It's a
makes the
wonderful
job
town.
exciting.
Wonderful
It is.
town,
It is a wonderful
Londonderry.
town. And can I bring up another issue too?
Sure.
I know we're running low on time, but we were talking about it off camera. Oh, this issue of 4A in the funding. Just so everyone understands, we're obligated to spend $5 million.
Right.
And so this latest round, they came back, the engineer that's working on it in the state came back because this latest round of the environmental impact study is taking longer than what they had projected, meaning they need some extra money right now to pay for that. Whether we give them that money today or we give it to them 2 years from now, they are going to spend $5 million.
Right.
So while it is frustrating that it's taking longer than we thought, I hope I don't want people to think, oh, we're spending more money than what's necessary. No, we are obligated. We're on the hook for $5 million.
Right.
So whether I'm paying for the environmental impact study, engineering, construction, it's going to go.
Right. So every year when we have the budget, there's a line item that says that $5 million that we're obligated.
Yep.
Is there another place that says what we've already expended?
There should be. Yeah, there should be a place in the budget that says that we've expended with this latest contract $2.8 million.
Right.
So we have approximately $2.2 million remaining that we're obligated for.
Right. And we didn't ever bond for that $5 million, did we?
No, we have. Yeah. We've been bonding it all along.
So, well, my question is then, are we paying interest on $5 million that we haven't spent?
No, because we haven't pulled the entire $5 million in the bond. And part of the reason for that is we didn't know the time frame on when it would be spent.
So the way it works is the bank says for purposes, the bank says, we're going to give you $5 million. We won't start charging you interest until you start pulling that money.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And
All
we've
right.
been pulling it a little bit at a
Sure.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin, thanks so much for
Mary,
coming.
you're welcome.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I'll see you
Thanks for
in
having me.
September.
Sounds great.
All right. This has been Mary Wing Soares and Kevin Smith, our town manager and transparency in government. Thank you for joining me.